Hi there. What we are looking at today is C64m, a Commodore 64 emulator that I produced. I say produced because it was written almost entirely as a black box using Claude code and ChatGPT Codex. The exception is that it uses the 6502 CPU and a fair bit of the assembler that I wrote for an Apple II emulator called A2M. The goal was to see how far I could get and how long it would take to get a C64 that boots to BASIC. It helped that I had already built an emulator and had a good idea of what worked and what didn't. I specified the structure I wanted, that I wanted it written in C, and that a few open source libraries with permissive licenses were okay to use. After that, the rest of the code was written by agents without me looking at the code at all. After 6 hours and 42 minutes, I could type basic programs into the emulator that already looked much like it does now. It had proper colors and even had the structure of the debugger UI built in. At the time I am making this video, I've spent 60 hours on it, so about 1.5 working weeks. As you can see, the emulator accepts pasted basic. You can type all characters from the host OS keyboard using symbolic mapping, and you can also drag and drop D64, PRG or basic programs onto it. When you press F9, the debugger is revealed. The C64 window can be resized, and so can the views. The active view is highlighted, and you can switch views with either the mouse or the keyboard. Pressing Alt-H brings up the help system. The help system is the user manual written in Markdown, processed and presented inside the emulator. The CPU view shows the general CPU and flag status, and all of it can be edited. The disassembly view shows current execution with symbols on addresses when they are available. You can single step, step out and step over code. You can set breakpoints, and for bank memory you can choose whether to see RAM, ROM or whatever the CPU is seeing. The miscellaneous view has several tabs. The first is the machine tab, where you can mount disks or load and save basic or binary programs to the host file system. You can also configure the emulator, including PAL and NTSC settings, turbo speed multipliers for running the machine faster than 1 MHz, and symbol files to load for display in the disassembly view. The debugger tab shows execution cycles and a live call stack. When the machine is stopped, you can also jump the disassembly view to the locations in the call stack. The Breakpoints tab lets you view and edit breakpoints. Breakpoints can be enabled or disabled. They can trigger on read, write, or execute. They can be set at a single address or across a range of addresses. And in banked areas, they can be set to trigger in RAM or ROM only. The counters control when and how often a breakpoint triggers. Breakpoint actions control what happens when a breakpoint is hit. They can stop the emulation, set the CPU to normal or fastest mode, or turn tracing to a file on or off. Swap and type actions are useful for skipping repetitive data entry or disk swaps through automation. Each disk drive can have a queue of disk images, and swap actions can switch between images. Type actions can press or press and hold any key or key combination and also perform joystick actions. There is a parser for scripting keys. The hardware tab shows interesting information about the system and its chips. The assembler is built in. It is a very fast 2-pass multi-file macro assembler that also populates symbols in the disassembler view. Near instant assembly of thousands of lines of code and having symbol lookups makes assembly language development easier. The memory view can also look at RAM and ROM. You can edit RAM, and you can split the view up to 16 times so you can watch different parts of memory easily. Each virtual view is completely independent with its own cursor and state. Each location also knows the program counter for the code that last wrote to it, and you can quickly find the code by selecting one of the 4 addresses and jumping to it in the disassembly view. I've tried many games from the OneLoad collection, and they mostly work. I bought a copy of Galencia when it was released, and it also mostly works as long as I load the NTSC or PAL versions directly, since I do not have IEC or serial emulation yet. Under some circumstances, the sprites in the game do render incorrectly. That is something for a future fix. The structure of this emulator is the same as the Apple II emulator I made. That is just how I want an emulator to work. I will continue improving it, but it will almost certainly never compete with the likes of Vice. I am very happy with how far I have gotten and how fast it was to get here. This started as an exercise in agentic coding, and it has produced something that is actually valuable to me. C64m is built to work on Windows, Linux and Mac OS using C and SDL2. All the code and most of the feature level prompts I use are on GitHub, as is A2M, the Apple II emulator. Links in the description. Thank you for watching.